Hi, good neighbors. My name is Matt Austin, and I'm here. If you're listening, you're here. Uh, I'm here to present on some audit work that I've been doing. So I'm going to dive deep into what I see as some systemic corruption within our city's civil service system. So a little background. My name is Matt Austin, and I was the former Open Data and Analytics Project Coordinator for the City of Buffalo. Um, During my appointment, I was appointed from January 2022, and I was terminated effective immediately in June 2023. So I served in my provisional title for 18 months. During my time, I was appointed by Chief Information Officer Daryl Springer, and I reported directly and was I was supervised by the Director of Open Data, Kirk McLean. And yeah, I just think I've been today, or when I'm posting this, it's been a year since I've been fired, and it's taking me some time to put the pieces together and really reflect on what happened to me when I was terminated. But I think I put some pieces. I think I've put together a puzzle and some different pieces that go together, and I hope you'll stay with me through this whole hour-long conversation as I get deep into what I think are some issues within our civil service system. So I have my union contract, so I'm trying to think of the best way to get this started. I'm kind of just off riffing. I thought about maybe doing some, outline and reading, but I think the best way for me to approach this is just me kind of ripping off the top of my head. I've thought a lot about this. It's had a great effect on me, but essentially to understand this, I think the first way to start this conversation is, and if you haven't worked in City Hall, you might just view all city hall workers as the same. But I think it's important to understand that it's like a caste system. There's a caste system in City Hall. So if you can imagine a triangle, at the top of the caste system, is the mayor, is our elected officials, our controller, the council members. But at the top of the pyramid, you can think of, there's the management and the worker class. So at the top of the pyramid is the exempt class. So these are commissioners, high-level employees that are essentially appointed by the mayor with approval from the Common Council. These are the people that run the department. So the commissioners of the department are all exempt employees. They're decision makers, managers. They run the show. They run the day-to-day operations of the city. So they're kind of the highest level, right? They're the managers. And then below them, you have the working class. So you have the working class, which are essentially civil servants. So within this, there's really two types. There's kind of in the mid-range, there's the classified or the permanent employees. These are people that have passed the civil service exam, and due to their competency, based on them scoring well on the exam, they have a permanent appointment. So through the civil service, they're classified, they're permanent employees that have a whole host of rights based on, their qualifications based on their competency. But at the bottom of the pyramid, so at the bottom of the City Hall caste system and our civil service system, there's a class of employees. These are provisionals, temporaries, seasonal workers. These are people that are like classifieds, but they don't have as many rights. Their employment status is less. So that's kind of the City Hall caste as in the civil service caste. And obviously there's this tension between the managers, so the exempt class, and the working class, or the classifieds and the provisionals. I was a provisional employee, which was the lowest class of or I should say seasonal and temporary are probably lower than provisionals, but provisionals are definitely below the classified, the permanents. So the root of, I think, what's going on at City Hall is the City of Buffalo has rules of classified civil service. And so Rule 16.4 is around provisional appointments. And in this rule, it states that no provisional appointment should last more than 9 months, should last no more than 9 months. And it requires that the Commissioner of Human Resources offer a civil service exam to see that no provisional appointment lasts more than 9 months. The point of that is to, you have a role that you need filled, so we can hire a provisional person to fill that role. And then after no longer than 9 months, we can hold a civil service exam to get the most qualified, competent person in that seat. So I was a provisional employee. I was hired as I said, January 2022. Uh, I was very excited when I started my role as an open data project coordinator in analytics. I was, super excited. I have a master's degree in urban planning. I love data. I love GIS. Analytics. I think data is something I'm passionate in. I'm a web developer. I just, love all sorts of things about data. And I was really excited to not only apply, my expertise in data and analytics, but work for a city that I care deeply about. I live here. I went to school here. I own a house here. This is my home, and the ability to use data and use technology, especially the open data portal. So data.buffalonewyork.gov is a website that this role was responsible for, essentially being the technical lead. So in my role, I was responsible for just making sure, being the technical person, making sure that data on the open data portal was updated. So all sorts of information about the city is on that website that anyone can access with a web browser. So there's things like our assessment roll, all the crimes that have happened in the city, all sorts of data sets that are valuable. And it's not perfect, but it's definitely the best type of data that the city has. And I think I was really excited to start the position. And yeah, over the course of the term, so I also worked on the city's SaaS analytics contract, which is a whole other thing that I've posted some items on, but I was brought in and I was a project coordinator, or the technical person for the city's SaaS analytics contract. So after the murder of George Floyd, the city of Buffalo entered into the Buffalo police reform agenda. And part of the Buffalo police reform agenda was, to improve policing in our department, because we all, I think, know that the police in our city needs a lot of reform. So item 10 in the Buffalo reform agenda was data transparency. So the city and the mayor announced that they entered into a $2.2 million analytics contract with the SAS Institute. And part of the police reform agenda said, through this agreement, the city and the police department, Buffalo Police Department, was positioned to become the most innovative and transparent police department in the country. So I was involved in that project, and from my point of view, it did not go well. The city employees, or the consultants that the city got, were not competent. We got the C team, and it was very frustrating to be sending them all the data and information, and they literally produced nothing of value. The only thing the city got were essentially blue bar charts that were never made publicly. So that was kind of my overview of my experience. The open data portal and the SaaS analytics contract. I was appointed provisionally in. I think my appointment and my employment started well, and then over the course of my tenure there, I think just things changed. I mean, one, it was the SaaS analytics contract. I think just seeing that up close, seeing how these privileged SaaS consultants were, stealing through incompetence or just not caring about the residents. Seeing that firsthand was disturbing to me, and I tried my best. I went to my direct supervisor, Kirk McLean, who was the city's director of open data at the time. He's since been promoted to the chief innovation officer. I pressed him on a one-on-ones just to do something. We need to do something about this contract. And I eventually pushed him to the point on a one-on-one where he eventually said, "What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do about it?" And that was kind of the moment where I just lost respect for him. And from then on, I was like, "Oh my God, what do you want? You're the project manager. Let's do something about it." But so I think, and then I also went to the chief information officer, and he also didn't seem interested to do anything. So I think that was the first thing that crossed tension. Is just I think everyone that was involved with the SaaS contract would say it didn't go well, but no one would publicly say, like, they all know it's not well, but they won't say anything publicly or do anything about it. So that was definitely the first point of tension. The other point of tension during my appointment was around my provisional status. So obviously I was hired as provisional. I knew I was provisional. I knew what that meant. But during my interviews, I was told that there would be a civil service exam for my position. So during my interviews, I took the job under the assumption that there would be a civil service exam and I could get a job in City Hall and I could be, a classified or permanent person, and that could be my career. So one of the points of tension was that no civil service exam was ever offered for the open data and analytics project coordinator title. So yeah, I pressed my direct supervisor, Kirk McLean. I expressed, to the chief information officer looking for a civil service exam. And essentially my direct supervisor, Kirk McLean, once I kept pressing him for a civil service exam, he told me, go to your union. So that led me to going to my union. So, let me see if I can change it. So this is the agreement for my union. So I was a member of, local AFSCME 650. So that's the union I was represented with. So Kirk McLean's statement, or go to your union, led me to go to my union. So, this is where Tracy Healy enters the story. So Tracy Healy was my union president. She is the local AFSCME president for the 650 union in City Hall. The first time I, went up to visit Tracy Healy, I remember this well. The first thing she said to me was, "How long you been here for?" That was the first thing she said to me. I went to just introduce myself and introducing. The first thing she said was, how long you been here for? So it's Tracy Healy. And the best way I can describe my perception of her, she gives me the Jeeper Creepers, right? She's just her vibe sends shivers down my spine. So she was my union president, and I went to her several times. I had gone to her a couple times. I went to her. I was concerned when Chief Information Officer Daryl Springer asked me to provide him with a script that would provide him with information about all the clock in, clock out information for all city employees. She said, just go to her if anything concerned you. So I went to her with that. Also, when the Nona Watson lawsuit came out, that was, for those that aren't familiar, it was a lawsuit against the city where the director of Bureau essentially just stated that the Buffalo Urban Renewal Agency was, directing bids and contracts to, preferred vendors, and just accused the Bureau and City Hall of some fraud. And actually I was disturbed in that because the day it was announced, I opened up the document, looked through it, and my predecessor, who I won't name, but the person essentially before me that had my exact same title, she was actually named in the lawsuit because it said that she was being paid from Housing and Urban Development Community Block Grant, or CDBG funds. So essentially the city of Buffalo gets funds from the federal government, and the federal government says you can use these funds for affordable housing, for housing. So essentially what the Nona Watson lawsuit laid out was that she was my predecessor, so the person in my title was being paid with HUD funds. So I was very concerned when I heard that. So I went to my union president when I saw that and just asked her, am I being paid with HUD funds? I don't want to be named in a lawsuit. And she said, no, don't worry. If anything happens to you, we got you. Nothing to worry about. I think that was what she said. That was what she said when I asked her about the chief information officer's scripts for all the clock in, clock out information. She said, yeah, if anything happens to you, don't worry, we got your back. So that was Tracy Healy. And she'll come back into the story a little later as I get into my actual termination. But yeah, she's my president. And I didn't know this at the time, but I found out later that she actually, in addition to being the local AFSCME president, and I should say in this role, she's been found multiple times. I think the investigative post story on Jill Ruttman, or the clerk that got paid over $500,000 not to work, Tracy Healy was her union president. So, and even I think if you go as back to far as to 2010, she was found. I think she was like manipulating like dead people's invoices or something back in the day. Like in 2010, she was caught up in some HR scandal. So that's Tracy Healy, and I'll come back to her a little later. But yeah, she was my union president, and so essentially, as I said, my tension that came up during my appointment was the SAS contract, but also the lack of a civil service exam. I knew that by being provisional, I knew I could be fired at any time, and I didn't want to be fired at any time, especially when the people you're working with, a lot of them are classifieds, have taken civil service exams. So this led me to filing a grievance with my union, because at a certain point, I think it was, and I don't have access to my exact date just because I don't have my city email records account anymore. So, but after 9 months, I want to say it was around January, I filed a grievance I sent a grievance to local AFSCME president Tracy Healy, basically just saying, I stated that I thought my job was misclassified. So I think my job, the Open Data Analytics Project Coordinator title, was not, I didn't think it was in the right tier. And first of all, I couldn't find any civil service information about the title. It's not listed in the local AFSCME handbook. So there's a list of actually, let's see if I can pull this up. But yeah, in this agreement, there's a whole list of job titles. So this is the city's union contract. So this is the agreement between the city of Buffalo and local 650. This expired in 2019 and is still expired. So they're operating under agreement, but this has a bunch of local 650 job titles and salary grades. So it lists all of the, the jobs represented by this organization, and also has these salary grade or job class. So how much you make is based on the salary grade in your job class was. So I part of my grievance, my original grievance that I filed, was just saying that I thought my job was misclassified. I couldn't find it anywhere in this union agreement. And then on the city's, or on the New York State Civil Service website, I could not find the Open Data and Analytics Project Coordinator title. So I could not find my title, could not find any exam information, was being told that there was no exam or there wasn't going to be an exam. So in my grievance that I filed with Tracy Healy, I essentially just laid out that I thought my job was misclassified. I thought there's other jobs in my department that required, for example, an associate's degree. And my job on the job specs required, a bachelor's degree, preferably master's, but yet we were on the same job and grade class. There's a lot of technical things like ETL, which is extract, transform, and load, which is a way of bringing data from multiple databases. Essentially, you take data from a database, do some transformations on it, and load it to somewhere else. So there's a lot of just technical skills I didn't think were in my job specs that I wasn't being compensated for. So through my research, I found a data analyst role, or a data analyst title that was in the New York State classified civil service titles that I thought, based on the descriptions of that job, were very similar to the job I was performing, and it was a classified civil service role. So essentially, in my grievance with the HR department, I said I thought my job was misclassified, and I thought the data analyst position was more appropriate, or it was similar, and I sent that as like a grievance to my HR commissioner. And then I'll say this, this local AFS CME agreement, it lays out all sorts of, procedures. So settlement of disputes, this is Article XIX, settlement of disputes. So there's this whole grievance and arbitration procedure that, now that I've gone through this document, I realized that my grievance did not follow the proper procedures. So I think it was February 13th, So I think it was in February 2023, the HR department responded to my grievance. It was actually the Personnel Specialist 2 in the Civil Service Division. And keeping on, Tracy Healy is a Personnel Specialist 1. So the Personnel Specialist 2 for the city responded to my grievance. And nowhere in this article does it, that's not part of the procedure. There's a whole procedure that should have been followed. So, for example, like step 1 says the employee and or the union. Whoa, I don't know if I like that camera. Technical difficulty. So it says, like, for example, step 1, the employee and or the union shall submit the grievance orally to the employee's immediate superior and the employee's union representative within 20 working days of the occurrence of facts, giving rise to grievance and notice of such facts to employees, whichever is later. So there's a whole set of procedures that I don't think were followed. But essentially, the HR department filed my grievance, just said that, the job had evolved considerably. No request for a data analyst position had been received. And it actually mentioned that the local 650 had filed a grievance in 2019, and that based on the clear practicability of examination, it would be a 650 job. So even though the 650 filed a grievance to get the title within their shop, they didn't really help me secure this exam. So in February, the HR department responded to my grievance. So then after the grievance, I still wasn't sure how it worked, but Tracy Healy was in my department. So the one day she was talking to one of the secretaries in the MIS, or the Management Information System. So I pulled Tracy aside and said, "Hey, Miss Healy, I don't know if I said it that way, but I'd like to speak with you when you have a chance." So after that, she came into the back room where and at that time there was another Open Data Analytics project coordinator who was kind of on the same page as me, but also, was curious why there wasn't a civil service exam. And we talked about my grievance, and during the course of our conversation, I'll never forget these words, what she said to me. During our conversation, at the end, she said, "You need to slow your march down." And I didn't know what to take that, but I'll never forget that quote, because still to this day I don't fully understand what that means. Slow your march down. I sit in a cubicle all day. I don't march at all. I think it was a way to intimidate me. And now that I've been out a while, I kind of understand why she told me that. So my grievance, I didn't specifically ask for a civil service exam. I had kind of at that point accepted that there was going to be no civil service exam, and it was proposing almost a solution to solving that problem. But I think and I didn't even know she worked in the civil service department, but essentially I think she told me to slow my march down, because I think she knew that if I kept pushing forward and maybe eventually hit the mark on the next one, that it would put her, she didn't want that. So I think I felt like she was trying to intimidate me, which brings me back to this local AFSCME agreement. So the Bill of Rights for this agreement is laid out in the AFSCME, and it says right here, right C, an employee shall not be coerced or intimidated or suffer any reprisals, either directly or indirectly, that may adversely affect his hours, wages, or working conditions as a result of the exercise of his rights under this agreement. So I exercised my grievance rights, which as a dues-paying member, I should have had union rights. Yeah, I definitely perceived her statement as slow your march on as intimidation or punishment for not. And once I filed my grievance, it was never the same. Vibes changed for sure, not only with Tracy Healy, but within the department. Shortly after my grievance, the other person in my titles, there's two people, Open Data Analytics Project Coordinator. She quit. So at that point, it was my direct supervisor, Clerk, who's the director of Open Data, and just me. It was the two of us in the Open Data department. And over time, I was never told that I was not doing a good job, but over the course of time, I stopped getting less work. So for example, when I started, it was told that the director of citizen services at Walls Domestic had requested my presence on a project for the 311 system, which I was excited about, but that opportunity, I never had a chance to participate in the 311 system. And yeah, just started getting less things, and it definitely got the sense that I was a dead man walking. I hadn't been executed yet, but that was the way it was going. So it was a hostile, I guess, work environment. I mean, I wasn't the easiest person to manage. I'm very opinionated and always I'm asking why things are done. And like I said, once I was told, what do you want me to do about the SaaS contract, I kind of lost respect for my direct supervisor. So I definitely wasn't the most enjoyable person to manage, but over the course of time, just the vibes changed, and I kind of knew, okay, I'm provisional. I'm being kept provisional. There will be no civil service exam, so I can be fired at will, and I probably will be fired at will. And also, I mean, in May 3rd, I think, when the mayor released his budget, the director of open data title was not in the budget. So during my next one-on-one with Kirk McLean, the city's director of open data, I asked him, hey, why is the director of open data title not in the budget? And he just went, what? And I said, Kirk, your job title is not in next year's budget. What's going on? Why isn't it in there? And he just said, I don't know. Let me look into it. So essentially, the mayor released the budget. His job wasn't in there, and I kind of knew just he was angling for the chief innovation officer title. So actually, that day, May 3rd, I went and I filed. You can go to the HR department and just file request information. So I went down to HR and asked for the city's chief information officer title, and I was told that no title existed, even though it was in the budget. So I kind of got the sense that he was going to be promoted chief information officer, and I just was curious. I also knew, okay, if I'm going to be kept provisional, I want to be the director of open data. So at one point, I did go to the chief information officer after my grievance too, and speaking with Tracy Healy, and just asked to be promoted to the director of open data title if I was going to be kept provisional. And he said, no, maybe next year, or that's not going to happen. He had a very smug, after my grievance, very smug, almost, yeah, very smug attitude to, I would think, someone managing him, asking him about provisional. He said that no civil service exam would be created because that would require all the commissioners getting together to make one. So he almost made it seem like there's too much on his plate that he couldn't get done. But when actually civil service law compelled that he had to do that. So yeah, May 3rd, I approached Clerk McLean, but this all leads me to June. So I had been attending council meetings during city time. I had been told by Clerk McLean, my direct supervisor, that as long as I was getting the work done, it didn't matter what I did. He was encouraging an innovative work culture, innovative environment. So I started attending council meetings. It was on our union each union member gets a union calendar. So like even on our union calendar, it has this common council meetings like on the calendar. So I thought it was a great opportunity for me to learn. At that point, I'd kind of mastered the technical aspects of my position. I knew how the open data portal worked. I knew how to, query data from different databases. I knew how to, do a lot of the technical work for my job. The one thing I didn't understand was how the city actually functioned, right? So I started on my own. And my job description says I exercise independent discretion. So right on the job specs for the open data analytics project coordinator, it says the person in this role exercises a great deal of independent discretion. So I exercised my independent discretion and started attending council meetings. I didn't have any meetings on my calendar at this point. Clerk McLean he was not giving me work. He was not trying to develop me or progress me. So I took that upon myself to start learning as much as I could about the city, how it works. So I started attending common council meetings. So I probably started attending council meetings in April, and it was never noticed. No one ever said anything to me. It was never alarmed as issue. No one ever said anything that I wasn't at my desk or wasn't getting work done. But this all changed in January or in June. So on June 13th, I was attending a council meeting in the common council chambers. I think this was the day there was a fire drill. So I was sitting in the common council chambers, and I think an item on the agenda was something union related. So who do I see in the union or in the common council chambers but Tracy Healy herself? So Tracy Healy confronted me in the chambers. She asked me why I was there. I said, I'm just here to observe the meeting. So we talked for a bit, and after that she got up and left, and she left the common council chambers. And she was just giving me really weird vibes of, why was she, confronting me in the common council chambers, and why did she get up and leave? So she got up and left. At that point, the common council meeting had not started yet. So I got up and I went in to grab my laptop just because usually the meetings, if it says it starts at a time, it starts relatively quickly. So I grabbed my laptop from upstairs, or just the floor above, and came downstairs. And boy, when I was in that chamber, I just felt like all eyes were on me. Like there was council chambers. I just had weird vibes of people walking around looking at me. So after that meeting, I got up, I left, and the next week I was fired. So on June 20th, 2023, I was terminated by the city's chief information officer, Daryl Smenger, and I was represented by local AFSCME 650 president. On my termination letter, I was terminated effective immediately, and I was not given a reason. But Chief Information Officer Daryl Springer said that I was recorded. He said, "Were you in the common council meetings?" And I said, "Yeah, I was." And he said, "Oh, well, you were recorded there. You were you were recorded in the Common Council chambers. So I didn't understand. I said, well, yeah, I was exercising independent discretion. And he said, I don't know what he said, but he said, you're fired. So essentially what I believe, this is my perception, is that my union president, Tracy Healy, and a personnel specialist in the HR department, she instigated my termination. I believe when she got up in the chambers, she went and she contacted council staffers to record me or get me on tape. And two council staffers, Pedro Gonzalez Ortiz and Kimmy Podgorsak, they inexplicably searched and viewed my LinkedIn profile like shortly after the Common Council chambers. So I don't know why they searched me, but I suspect that she maybe said something to the Common Council to get me on tape. So yeah, I think my union president instigated my termination from City Hall. She didn't pull the trigger, but she definitely yelled, shoot. I think I didn't slow my march down, and I think she wanted to take me out. So I think she did. And during my termination, as Mr. Springer terminated me, I kind of pushed back that I was doing my job. I was exercising independent discretion. And Tracy Healy, she provided no representation, especially not what I would expect from a union president. Someone said that they'd always have my back if anything ever happened to me. So after the meeting, she just kind of said, sorry, you shouldn't have been in the chambers. And that was it from Tracy Healy. And then 10 days later, my direct supervisor, Kirk McLean, the director of open data, he did get promoted to the chief innovation officer title that I suspected. And he said, what? That he pretended like he didn't know what was going on, but he just didn't want to tell me that, yep, I think they were looking to fire me. So I think they just didn't really have a good reason. But I think when they found me in the council chambers, that provided them, a reason in their minds to fire me. So yeah, 10 days after I was fired, Kirk McLean announced on LinkedIn that he was promoted to the city's chief information officer title. And I was walked out of City Hall by two police officers. After I was terminated, they walked me back to my desk. I was allowed to collect a paper box, put my belongings in it, and I was escorted out by two police officers, like straight out of a movie, and then just dumped out on the front deck. And yeah, that was it. It was effective immediately. I got back to my computer, couldn't log in. Yeah, I was kind of shocked. Obviously, I didn't go to work that day expecting to be fired, but yeah, I was fired. So let's see. I think that's kind of my personal story, right? So I've never really given the full, I think, view of my termination, but that's my individual story of why I was fired, which leads me to the puzzle I think I've put together. So that's kind of the background. I want to get it down. We're about halfway through. So that was 30 minutes. Thanks for sticking with me through my individual situation. But I think I'll spend the next bit of this hour-long show diving into the more general things going on that I think my specific case illustrates. So to summarize my specific case, I was appointed to a provisional title, held that title for 18 months. A civil service exam was never offered by the city's Human Resource Commissioner, even though civil service law says that she should prevent any provisional appointment from lasting more than 9 months. And I believe that my union president, Tracy Healy, instigated my termination as retaliation, I think, for filing a grievance, but also just for coming to her with various complaints, like my predecessor being named in the No Watson lawsuit. Yeah, other things. I think she just saw that I wasn't a personality fit with City Hall. So that's kind of my very specific in the weed case. But I think it's important to understand that because I think what I'm going to lay out next is kind of how my situation is just a larger illustration of the bigger picture, right? So why does it matter? Why does my termination matter? Why does provisional employment matter? Why does it matter? I think it matters because of the state our city's in right now. We are in a financially dire situation. That might be understating it, but yeah, we are in our city doesn't have any money, right? So the Common Council has been burning through money. I mean, Investigative Post has been doing great reporting, but I think there's just so much corruption, so much. It's a Jerry Springer show. Like every day, if you're paying attention, there's a new clerk getting paid $500,000. The mayor's sons is the public information officer for the sewer authority, but you need to FOIL for his information. There's just so much graft, so much corruption. It's rotted. It is corroded to the core. I think, I think we're in a dire state, and I think it's all downstream of the people running the show, right? So not only the mayor and the appointed and the appointees or the exempt class, the commissioners, but everybody in City Hall matters. All the people that our tax dollars are going to pay, they matter. And we have rules in place to make sure that we get the most competent people in those seats. And that's why civil service law is in place. It's to make sure that there are parameters so that it doesn't devolve into graft and nepotism and incompetence and corruption. There has to be a high level of standard that we should hold our public servants to. They're getting taxpayer dollars. They're getting full health care. They're getting a full paid pension. We should just demand that we get the most bang for our buck. And that's why civil service law matters, is because all the corruption, all the graft, everything is downstream of the people. Who are the people running the show? Who are the people operating our city? And that brings me to the civil service law. So where should I start? So I think I'm going to dive in a little now to the actual laws, and let me try to pick up a screen. So I think to understand really, first we need to understand Section 75, right? So provisional employees, Section 75, what's Section 75? Section 75 is removal and other disciplinary actions. So it is the civil service law that lays out how you can remove and discipline public servants. So Section 75 matters because classified and permanent employees, so again, think of the hierarchy. You have exempt people at the top, who are the appointees of the mayor. Then in the middle, you have the classified permanent civil service, and at the bottom of the provisionals, right? So provisionals are not entitled to Section 75 termination proceedings. And this was actually a foil. The exact response I received from the Civil Service Department when I foiled asking for the procedure for terminating provisional employment is provisional employees are not entitled to Section 75 termination proceedings. So why does this matter? Because without Section 75 termination proceedings, they can fire you at will for any reason. And also why this matters is the Employee Bill of Rights, right? So the AFSCME contract has the Employee Bill of Rights. So it says, to ensure that individual rights of employees in the bargaining unit are not violated, the following shall represent the Employee's Bill of Rights. A, no employee shall be required by the city to submit to an interrogation after charges under Section 75 have been served, unless he is afforded the opportunity of having a union representative present. Right? So if you are a member of our city's white-collar union and you're provisional, you do not have, in the Bill of Rights, you do not have Section 75, so your rights as a civil servant are restricted. You do not have Section 75 termination proceedings. So why does that matter? So I think what's going on is, this is my case, but I also think it is systemically what's going on, is that the Human Resource Commissioner, Gladys Herndon Hill, is not offering civil service exams. So she's violating systemically provisional appointment, Section 16.4. And she's doing this, or she's enabled, because the union president, who is responsible for representing provisionals and pushing back on her to get civil service exams, is a direct subordinate of her. She works in the HR department, and she is directly supervised by the head of the department. And I think you could actually make the case, and obviously this is a bad look. We don't want this happening. Well, lo and behold, there's actually a civil service law, Section 27, prohibition against certain public employment and political activities. So Section 27, A member of a municipal civil service commission or personnel officer appointed on or after the effective date of this act shall not hold any other public office or employment under the political subdivisions or subdivision over which such commission or personnel officer exercises jurisdiction, for which he shall receive compensation other than necessary travel and other expenses incurred in the performance of the duties of such office or employment. So we actually have a civil service law that prevents civil service employees from holding employment under subdivisions that they exercise jurisdiction. And AFSCME is, I think you could make the argument it is in the subdivision. So it is the employee organization that the city recognizes to represent employees. So yeah, it is the only organization that has the unique privilege of being able to represent our city's white collar workforce. So I believe Tracy Healy, in my opinion, is violating Section 27 of New York State Civil Service Law. So she's double hat, right? She's wearing two hats. She's wearing one hat where she is the local AFSCME president. And then on the other hat, she is a Human Resources Division of Civil Service employee, Personnel Specialist 1, where she is responsible for overseeing civil service examinations in administration. And actually as a member, so where this conflict really illustrates is in the execution of this contract, right? So local AFSCME, specifically the settlement of disputes. So settlement of disputes, this is Article 19 XIX. So grievance and arbitration procedures. So this contract lays out arbitration procedures, and a lot of it requires that, all these steps, it involves the Commissioner of Human Resources, Commissioner of Human Resources, Commissioner of Human Resources. So this, it involves the union interfacing with the Human Resources Commissioner. And let me see if I can find the article, but as the local AFSCME president, Tracy Healy, the grievance committee. So the union grievance committee may, upon request, meet with the department heads. Okay. B, the union grievance committee shall consist of the union president, grievance committee chairman, and the grievance committee member from that particular department involved. So then as an officer, officers investigate and process grievances. So essentially what we have here is that Tracy Healy, as local AFSCME president, is on the grievance committee for every single city department. And then on the other end, she works for the Human Resources Commissioner, through which all grievances go to. So essentially, I believe, and I think anyone with common sense would see this creates a conflict of interest. Any grievance that a local AFSCME employee or white collar employee files involves Tracy Healy. And specifically, any grievance that compels Human Resource Commissioner Gladys Herndon Hill to offer a civil service exam, or anytime you file a grievance against the civil service department, that would set up the, how can I word this? Set up the circumstances where Tracy Healy is responsible for investigating herself, right? So if a provisional employee like myself files a grievance with the HR commissioner saying, hey, you have not offered a civil service exam for my position, you're allowing my appointment to last more than 9 months, Tracy Healy has to investigate the grievance, represent the person against the division of which she is an employee. So this creates obviously a scenario where the city of Buffalo is essentially dominating the civil service system through this conflict of interest. And then also, again, the Section 75 proceedings. So Article 20 of this agreement, discipline and discharge. So this is the procedures for terminating the white collar employees. It says a person holding a position by permanent appointment or employment shall not be removed or otherwise subjected to any disciplinary penalty provided in this article, except for incompetency or misconduct. So essentially, again, here's this permanent position. If you're provisional, none of these procedures, none of these Article 20 discipline and discharge procedures apply to you. So this whole section is null and void. You don't have the null void rights. And that's bad enough. But that's just the back end. That's just once you're in the union. I haven't even touched on the front end. So I never authorized to join the union. So I've filed multiple items with the Common Council. And essentially, I want to turn your attention to, this is the union contract, Article 1, 1.2, dues and fees. The city shall deduct membership initiation fees from the wages of those employees who have filed with the controller an appropriate written authorization to do so, and shall remit the same to the union. Payroll deduction of union dues. Under the properly executed authorization forms, payroll deduction of union dues shall become effective at the time the form is signed by the employees and shall be deducted from the first pay period. So essentially, you have to authorize the union to deduct dues. And again, I was never, and I found through filing items, no authorization form exists with the controller's office. They started deducting my dues from day one without my permission, which is a violation of the collective bargaining agreement. And as I foiled that, Tracy Healy, she said, a mistake must have been made. So actually that's only a half truth because multiple mistakes were made. Not only was I missing an authorization form, but there was two other employees that were appointed by Chief Information Officer Daryl Springer and working under the direct supervision of Kirk McLean that also were missing authorization forms. So I think it's a policy and procedure that the city signs up people for the union, especially provisionals. So it's especially wicked for provisional employees because provisional employees aren't entitled to the Bill of Rights, the Right A, and the discipline discharge seating. So essentially what we have here is on the front end, the city of Buffalo and local AFSCME are coercing employees, and they're coercing employees to join the union. They're not giving them choice. You're saying you're in the union, and they do this by deducting dues from your paycheck without your permission, as required by the collective bargaining agreement. And actually, the Public Employees Fair Employment Act, this is actually Section 202, the right of organization. So Section 202 says, public employees shall have the right to form, join, and participate in, or to refrain from forming, joining, or participating in any employer or organization of their choosing. So what we have here is this: the city and Tracy Healy are preventing employees from refraining. If you get your dues deducted and you're in the union without you authorizing it, you do not have the option of refraining from joining the union. So on the front end, they're taking your dues, they're coercing you into joining the union, and then on the back end, they're failing to prevent representation to you because they are keeping you provisional indefinitely and restricting you of the ability to have Section 75 termination proceedings. So that's kind of what's going on, at least for, so this fair employment law, I think there's a lot of things in here that they're doing. Essentially, they are violating, on the front end, they are coercing employees to join the union, forcing you to, and then on the back end, when you express your rights in this agreement, they are, failing to uphold those. And I think I want to focus too on, again, this Bill of Rights. So this Bill of Rights, I want to focus too on B. So B, no recording device of any kind shall be used during such interrogation unless the union is made aware of the fact prior to such interrogation. So during my termination proceeding, Daryl Springer, he told me that I was recorded in the Common Council chambers. I don't know if he was shocked that I just told him, I was in the Common Council chambers, or he was expecting me to lie and say that I wasn't, and then he was going to say, haha, got you, we recorded you. But if there is footage, and I'm probably going to foil for this, but if there is footage of me, I think that could be a violation of of this Bill of Rights of if they were going to record me, they should have let my union know. But if it was my union president that requested that I get recorded, then that's also slippery slope. So then C, I want to focus on this Bill of Rights. An employee shall not be coerced or intimidated or suffer any reprisals, either directly or indirectly, that may adversely affect his hours, wages, or working conditions as a result of the exercise of his rights under this agreement. So this is where I feel I've been most aggrieved is in, right? I've been coerced. I was intimidated. So Tracy Healy's intimidated me. A couple other incidents that I think are notable is, in late November of 2023, I was filing items with the Common Council, essentially just trying to exercise my rights of 1.2. I was asking for my authorization form. And during that process, I mean, first of all, Tracy Healy said a mistake was made, and then she issued me a check that bounced for a couple $100 that said dues refund. And then when I went to her bank to get her to issue me the dues refund check, she, on the phone through the banker, told the banker to tell me that it was my fault. So she blamed me for the bounce check that she issued me. I think she was, I don't know if she's trying to intimidate me or scare me. But after I had been in communication with the Common Council, I attended a open data workshop at the Partnership for the Public Good in Cornell School of Industrial and Labor Relations. And on that day, I sat down, I took a bite of a panini sandwich, and I was there to ask questions. I was not a threat violently to anyone other than my tongue. I was there to ask questions. And also, I mean, I, at that point, was looking for work in the city's open data industry. So it was an opportunity for me to just meet other people that are interested in open data and maybe potentially work with them. At that point, I was interested in maybe even to working for or with the PPG. So I sat down at that meeting, which was presented by Chief Information Officer. At that point, he'd been promoted. His first public event as the Chief Innovation Officer, Kirk McLean. And it was a public meeting, so everyone was allowed to be there. But I sat down in the meeting. I took one bite of my panini sandwich, and then Kirk McLean got up. He left the room, walked right by me, didn't say a word. And then slowly a couple of the other PPG Cornell people got up out of the room. They had a discussion. And at that point, I knew, okay, they're talking about me. I don't know what's going to happen, but they're talking about me. So then Kirk had an employee of PPG come back in the room and tap me on the shoulder and tell me that I needed to step outside. So at that point, the PPG person told me that Kirk McLean was not comfortable with me in the room and that he would not give the presentation unless I was removed. First of all, I think it was cowardice for Kirk McLean to send an agent of someone else to throw me out of a meeting. But I knew veiled in the threat of he wouldn't give the presentation. I knew veiled in that statement was that if I didn't leave, the police would be called. So I left the meeting and, was thrown out of a public meeting by the Chief Innovation Officer. And I left because I didn't want the police called. I knew that's where we were going, so I bounced. I didn't want any part of that. And I think what Kirk McLean failed to tell the PPG is that he was, I don't know what he said about me. I don't know if he made me think I was right. What I'm pretty sure he didn't say that he was uncomfortable in the room because I had found that they were stealing my wages. I think he probably left that part out with the PPG, that he was uncomfortable because one, I had at that point been a whistleblower. I had spoken publicly about the SAS contract that he was the project manager for. And two, had through my foiling and through my items with the Common Council found that Tracy Healy and the union had violated the collective bargaining agreement and were stealing wages. I'm pretty sure he probably left those bits out, but he essentially, I think, used them, I think, to intimidate me. And just at that point, that kind of knuckleballed, everything in my plans to try to work in open data. The second event where I received intimidation was on Christmas Eve. So Christmas Eve 2023, 3 members of the Buffalo Behavioral Health Unit were sent to my house by the city's threat management unit, Nicole Krug. sergeant, detective, I don't know, they have all these titles, but the threat management unit, which essentially is the wing of the Buffalo Police Department that is supposed to be for like terrorists. So people like saying they're going to kill people or shoot up buildings. The threat management unit is used to like identify those threats. So for some reason, Nicole Krug sent 3 members of the BHU, or the behavioral health unit, to my house to conduct a mental health evaluation. And I'll release that. I have body cam footage that I folded for, and I'll let you view it for yourself and make your own judgments. But I believe they were sent to intimidate me, into, harass me and intimidate me. And they just walked up on me on Christmas Eve at my driveway and started asking me why I was fired. And it's something they did more to hurt my mental health than my mental health was before that. Because now I live in my house, and I fear that I'll be served with a no-knock warrant, because that's the thing that the Buffalo Police Department does. I'm scared that every time a helicopter flew over my house the other day, for God knows why, I think, oh, are they coming for me? I mean, just that action has done a lot for my mental health, has hurt my mental health. I'm in a constant state of worry, and even posting this, I know that something could happen to me. But I think, so yeah, those are kind of the things. But again, this isn't about me. This is about something bigger than me. This is something that I think, the reason I'm coming out with this and the reason that I'm speaking of this is just, I think I've put the pieces of the puzzle together. And I think, essentially to summarize, I just think we have to change civil service in our city. We have to enforce the rules and the laws that we have in the books, and we have to help turn the ship around with competent people that care about our city. And we can't do that with the current interference and domination that we have by specifically Tracy Healy. I think Tracy Healy, just from my talking with her, again, I said she gives me the Jeepers Creepers, right? I talked to her, and she's a personnel specialist, one in the human resource department, but she's a linchpin here. She's a major player of the operation. As local AFSCME president, she's copying on every single human resources or employee matter. And yeah, I think she's an underboss of the operation, and I think she used her position. I think she got her hats mixed up, and she saw me in the council chambers and decided to instigate my termination when she should have been, as my unit president, representing me and helping me get a civil service exam so I could become a classified exempt employee. And that also leads me to kind of new development. So also on May 21st, so in the new budget cycle, the city's eliminated the open data and analytics project coordinator title. So they held those positions vacant. There's 2 of them vacant for the entire fiscal year 2024. And now in fiscal 20 year 25, so the new budget that will start July 1st, 2024, they've eliminated my old title. They've posted 2 new titles, data specialist 1. So these are essentially the same job, just with a different job specs. I mean, it has the same salary. It reports to Kirk McLean. It has a lot of the things that I mentioned, like, I think ETL's in here. Where's ETL? But yeah, a lot of the skills that I kind of, here, extract, transform, and load. This was one of the things that I mentioned in my original grievance, wasn't in. So they essentially took the grievance I filed, and they wrote up this new job spec for the data specialist 1. So essentially they've eliminated the job that I had without any sort of civil service exam and created a new one. So that's kind of the newest development of they've created a new title. And that's kind of where we are today is, so I think I have about a minute left here. But yeah, thank you if you stuck with me the whole time. I hope that this recording can lead to some sort of change. I think maybe shine a light in places that I think most people don't think of civil service law, and even the Common Council, I think they're a little lax in their oversight ability. So Common Council, so the board of directors of the city, the Common Council Civil Service Committee, they meet every other week for 15 minutes scheduled. So they're scheduling only half an hour, but then those meetings only last 2 minutes. So there's essentially no oversight to our city's civil service system. So it really is this blonde, boring, obscure section of our cities that doesn't get much attention. So I'm hoping maybe my recording and me speaking can maybe shed some light, and we can get some reform and help improve the civil service system, which is corroded in our city, corroded to the core, and it needs to be rebuilt from the studs. So yeah, you can find all this information. I'll have this all posted on muckrakerpunk.net. If you're ever interested in reading more, I'll have my audit report. And I'm sure this won't be the last time that I'll be speaking publicly about these issues. So thank you for tuning in. And yeah, let's reform civil service. Thank you.